Hi, Thomas Brinsko here, publisher of BIC Magazine and BICmagazine.com. I'd like to talk to you about how I believe President Biden is playing a very dangerous game with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. For those of you who don't know, back in the 70s, when our country imported 70% of its energy, the Arab members of OPEC cut off oil and imported into the United States in response to American aid to Israel. It sent economic shock waves throughout the nation. In the aftermath of this oil crisis in 1975, we established the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, commonly known as the SPR. Today, the SPR is the world's largest supply of emergency crude oil. It's essentially a U.S. government complex of 4 sites with underground storage caverns across South Texas and the Louisiana Gulf Coast. The SPR was established primarily to reduce the impact of disruptions in supply of petroleum as we experienced in the 70s. Having this reserve for America is like having emergency funds in a savings account for a time when you lose your job or when a big unexpected expense arises like a surgery or something. The most oil we ever accumulated in this reserve was 727 million barrels. Now, we've made small test sales and releases of the reserve several times, but the purpose to reduce the impact of severe disruptions was accomplished notably in Desert Storm in '91 and Hurricane Katrina in 2005. Take a look at this graph. Since March of this year, a total of 180 million barrels of oil have been released since Biden authorized the use of the reserve. Recently, Biden announced a plan to release another 15 million barrels of crude from the reserve and says he's prepared to go further this winter if he needs to. Compared to a release of 11 or 21 million barrels of oil for a war or a Gulf Coast hurricane, where is the emergency that precipitated the release of this 200 million barrels of oil? Biden likes to blame the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but Russian exports are only down 560,000 barrels a day, which is 0.25% of the 101 million barrel per day global supply. In this case, I believe Strategic Petroleum Reserve means strategic for Democrat midterm elections because high gas and heating prices are crushing Americans, and these releases, in my opinion, is meant only to temporarily slow the rise in inflation prior to midterm elections, and that's not even working real well. I believe strongly that by depleting the SPR and not actively encouraging investment in the production and refining of American resources, this administration is doing more to put the nation's energy security at risk. The American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers President, Thompson, released a statement in response to the White House's latest planned release. He said, "The SPR was never meant to serve as a substitute for actual crude production. At best, SPR releases are short-term fix, not a long-term solution. The President and his team know that fuel prices are set by global markets and reflect supply and demand more than anything else. They're wrong to misdirect the American people on this point and pretend their policies have no role in compounding today's challenge." Well said, Chet. I too believe our challenges are being compounded by the current energy policies, and that might really impact the need for a real safety net like the SPR is intended to serve. Let me give you an example of what a real emergency might look like in the future by reflecting on the past. I'm old enough to remember in the 1970s when Saudi Arabia was a close partner of the United States. They pushed back hard against the Shah of Iran against a proposed 15% price hike by the cartel at the time. Instead of implementing the price hike, which would have really crushed the United States economy, the Crown Prince raised Saudi Arabia's production from 8 million barrels a day to 11.8 million barrels per day. The flood of oil into the market pushed Iran into bankruptcy. The Shah called the Crown Prince Judas Iscariot, and the two countries have been mortal enemies ever since. Saudi became our closest ally in the Middle East, and the U.S. started a decades-long run of selling arms to the Saudis to help protect their oil fields. Fast forward to today, Biden is desperately trying to close a nuclear deal with the sworn enemy of our closest Middle East ally. The president even referred to Saudi Arabia as a pariah state and vows to end the world's demand for oil. This was before he was recently snubbed when he begged Saudi to increase production. Instead, our old ally responded by announcing a 2 million per barrel day cut in OPEC production? What if Iran sees the weakness in U.S.-Saudi relations as an opportunity to attack Saudi Arabia again? If they were to bomb Saudi Arabia, the world's largest producer of oil, there would be new economic disruptions on a chaotic scale. I pray it doesn't happen, but of course it could. U.S. petroleum reserves haven't been this low since 1984. Mr. Biden's rapid SPR depletion means our current supply only covers 50 days of imports if they suddenly ceased. Cheap energy drives our economy, and for this reason we should encourage American production of oil and gas. The world is chaotic at times and unpredictable, and for this reason we should fill and protect the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We need better policy coming from our leadership. For this reason, we should get out and vote between now, early voting, and Election Day. God bless you and our country.